Hi guys, and welcome to a beginner's guide to modding Skyrim part 1. Now, I made an introduction video to this series where I explained who these videos were aimed at, what I was going to be showing you, and what you would need to be able to follow this series. These things included an account with Nexus, having Nexus Mod Manager installed. If you haven't done that yet, you are going to need to do that. I did also link to another video that showed you how to install Nexus Mod Manager and how to use it. I also mentioned WinRAR and 7-zip. You are going to need a program like that, something that can extract and create archives. But I also listed a willingness to learn as a priority, as something you needed to have to follow this series, and that is very true indeed. There are some things you're going to have to learn, and that is what we're going to start with in this video. We're going to start with the basics. Basic number 1, the game folder. Now this is very important. You need to know where your game folder is. What is the game folder? Well, the game folder is where you have installed the game. It is where the program that actually is run to get Skyrim started resides. A lot of you will just go along to an icon on your desk and you'll click it and the game will start, but that is not where the game actually lives. It's not where it resides. That is in your game folder, and it's very important that you know where that is and that you can find it fairly easily. Now, the game folder is in your Steam folder. However, the Steam folder can vary. It can vary where it is. The default placement is C program files. So if you just clicked all the default settings when you installed Steam, that is probably where you find it. I generally recommend against doing that. I actually like to have all my games on a separate drive, preferably an SSD for speed and performance, but also because it allows me to delete my operating system, reinstall things, and I don't lose my game files, which when you've modded your game quite a lot, that's pretty important. There is also another downside to having it in program files, and that is sometimes Nexus Mod Manager has trouble trying to alter the mods in that folder because of security issues. And you may, if you have installed Steam to the program files, you may have to run Nexus Mod Manager as an admin. I will show you how to do that when we get there. So I'm going to go to my games hard drive. I actually have an SSD with all my games on, and Steam is installed there. I'm going to open Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim, and that is your game folder. You will know if you're in the right place because if you scroll down, there will be a file called tesv.exe. Don't worry if you find a file that's called tesv and it doesn't have .exe at the end. That probably means that your operating system just hides known extensions from you. You can switch that off in the options if you want to. It's not essential, but you will see tesv, possibly with .exe at the end of it. Same with Skyrim Launcher, and then you know you are in the right place. Now, you will not have to install things in this folder very often, but when you do, you have to do it manually. The mod manager will not allow you to set up mods to go in this folder for security reasons. So anything that goes in the game folder will have to be placed there manually by you. Basic number 2, the data folder. This is the folder where most of your modding is going to happen. Finding this folder is trivial. It is in the game folder itself. So if you've stayed in your game folder, it is a folder called data. There you go. This folder is probably the folder you're going to do most of your work in whilst modding the game. This is the folder that contains all of the content, all of the data that the game uses, and this is where 99% of the mods get installed. Basic number 3, you're going to need to know where your ini files are. What are your ini files? Your ini files are the files that tell Skyrim how you want your preferences, resolution, all that type of thing. And they can be found under your documents. If you go to Documents, My Games, Skyrim. And as you can see here, I've got skyrim.ini and skyrimprefs.ini. You'll also find your save games are in here. If you ever want to back those up or remove a few, this is where you will find them. You're going to need to know where this folder is because you are going to have to change some things in skyrimprefs.ini and perhaps Skyrim.ini as well. So, to recap, if people ask you to go to your game folder, they're asking you to go to Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim, and it's where you find tesv.exe. If they ask you to go to data folder, it is the data folder that is under the game folder. And if they ask you to edit your skyrimprefs.ini or skyrim.ini, you will find them in your Documents, My Games, Skyrim folder. So, we've covered our basics, and whilst we still have many things left to learn, we're going to learn those as we go along. What we need now is some hands-on experience, and so we're going to install our first mod. And that mod is a quality world map. Now, not only is this mod a good mod to start with, it's reasonably simple, it shows the power of the mod manager, it is also a very good mod. It's one of the first mods I ever installed, and I never uninstalled it. For me, it's one of my essential mods. When I go to the Skyrim map, the default one, the vanilla one, I like it, it's very cool, but it's not as useful as it should be. It's actually a 3D representation of the world. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can even rotate a little, but as a map, well, it's not that useful. There are no roads for a start. I mean, that's one of the major things you put on a map, roads. So, for example, if I wanted to figure out how to get from Riverwood all the way to Solitude, I would have absolutely no idea from this map. Oh, I know I have to avoid this mountain, and I probably have to avoid these mountains, and there's some rivers, but honestly, I probably would just draw a straight line and try to make it there. Because there are no roads. Very difficult to navigate. Plus, it's got all these clouds obscuring details. I mean, that's very cool, but again, as a map, not quite as useful. So we are going to install this mod, which will make this map, well, it will make it higher quality, it will add roads, and it gives us the option to clean up those clouds. Okay, let's get this installed. Step one is go along to the mod page. I will leave a link down below, and you probably would do well to read all the information the front page has. It's always a good idea to do this. Familiarize yourself with exactly what the mod is doing. You can even read the installation notes, just in case there's anything special that you need to do, and so on. Always worth reading the front page, and possibly if it has a change log or a readme file, read that as well. So you click on here, you get the readme. And as you can see, this has got a fairly detailed readme. So I would recommend reading as much as possible about every mod that you install. I do realize not everyone does that, but it is a good idea. But to install it, what you need to do is go along to the Files section. And the file you're going to need this time is the main file. And there are two ways to download and install this. There is the manual method, but we are not going to cover that yet. I will cover that in this video, just in case. But for now, we're going to download with Manager, just to show you how easy it can be. Now, don't worry, if you don't have the Nexus Mod Manager running already, it will automatically start as soon as you click this button. It'll take a few seconds for the server to respond. Then Nexus Mod Manager, if you've installed it correctly, will start just like this. Once the mod manager is finished loading, it will start downloading your mod automatically. Now, once the mod manager opens, it will probably open on the plugins page. don't worry about all the plugins I've got. I've got a lot of mods installed. Yours will probably only have 4 to 5 ESMs, maybe some ESPs for the high-res texture pack as well. The same is true of the mods. I've got a lot of mods installed. You will probably have an empty list. Now, the area of interest to us is the download manager area. And as you can see, the file is downloading. You see a little progress bar at the bottom. And when it is done, the file is added to your mod list. So if I go up and look at my mod list, you'll see a quality world map has now been added. All I need to do now is activate this. So I go along here and I hit activate. It'll take a few seconds while it sets up this lovely menu for you. Now, the options I usually choose are, I like the high-res map, so I install all the roads. If you want the low-quality map, maybe your machine isn't as powerful, you can choose that too. And you can choose either main roads only or all the roads. As I said, I like all the roads, thank you very much. Skyrim is not that big, and I don't believe it would be that hard for them to map the roads. And I'm going to install the Clear Map add-on. If you like the clouds, leave this selected. Once you're done, click the install button. And it's done. It's that simple. It is now installed. And once in game, you can open up the map and see how things have changed. And there you go. No clouds hiding the details, and you can clearly see all of the roads. And if we zoom in, it's a lot easier to see which areas are hills, which are grass, and so on. Much more useful as a map, and as you saw, not particularly difficult to install either. And because we've used a mod manager, if we need to uninstall the mod or upgrade it, it is very easy. To disable this mod now, all I need to do is hit the deactivate button. That mod has now been essentially uninstalled. It is still in my mod list. I can still activate it if I want, but it is not in my Skyrim game. If you actually want to delete it completely, you can delete the actual mod itself, but I'm not going to do that. If you are curious as to what is going on behind the scenes, and curiosity is a good thing in this case, what is actually happening is, this is my data folder. You remember I showed you how to find that? In the textures, terrain, Tamriel folder, there is an empty space, as you can see. There's just a few trees. When I activate a quality world map, what actually happens is, depending on which of these options I choose, it adds a set of files there. There you can see them. They all appeared rather quickly. When I deactivate, it simply removes them. It's as simple as that. But the advantage to doing it with the mod manager is, if there are already files there, if there are some files there, it will warn you. And if they were installed by another mod, it will even tell you which mod they were installed by. And then when you overwrite them, it will take a backup of those files. And if you uninstall a quality world map, it will restore those files. So as you can see, it's a lot cleaner way of uninstalling a mod. So that is what is happening behind the scenes. You probably don't have to be aware of that very often, because you will do more or less all of your installation using your mod manager. It's just good to know. I did mention that if you have Steam installed on C program files, you may have some issues with permission denied. It is possible that your operating system will be set up in such a way as to deny other programs access to that folder. If you have got that set up, there is a way to work around it. If you don't want to move Steam, I would recommend moving Steam, but if for some reason you don't want to, you can always run Nexus Mod Manager in administrator mode. Now, you will always need to run Nexus Mod Manager first before you click the file, but it's very, very easy. You can either, step one is right click and run as administrator, and then you'll get this little security check, and it will run Nexus Mod Manager in administrator mode, and then click download with manager. You must have this running first, then hit download with manager, and the installation process after that is identical in all ways. Or the second way to do this is to actually set this icon to always run in administrator mode, and that probably is a better idea because you're going to forget sometimes. So you can right click, hit properties, advanced, run as administrator, click the OK button, and then apply. You will then basically be asked to confirm, hit continue, hit OK. Now this icon is set to always run Nexus Mod Manager in administrator mode. As you need to be running it from the icon though. So I run the icon, hit yes, and now it is run in administrator mode. Again, wait for the Mod Manager to finish loading before clicking the download button. But I would recommend only doing this if you have to. If you're getting problems with Nexus Mod Manager and running it as administrator solves those problems, then by all means run it as administrator. Otherwise, don't bother. Just run it normally. So we now have one mod installed. Let's get a few more in our load order. And the mods that I'm going to be looking at next are the unofficial Skyrim patches. There is one for the Skyrim game, one for Dawnguard, one for Hearthfire, and one for Dragonborn. I will put all the links down below. And what these mods do is essentially patch the game. They fix certain glitches, potential bugs, and so on. So as to learn a little bit more about the modding process, we're going to install this a little differently, at least the first one. We may install the last three the standard way, but this time what we're going to do for the unofficial Skyrim patch is we're going to go to the file section and manually download the file itself. Now I usually download these files to my desktop so I can manipulate them there. Okay, so the file has downloaded. Now, it's on my desktop, but you can't see it. If you are curious about that, that is a program called Fences. If I double-click my desktop, everything reappears. Double-click it again, it disappears. It's just a way for me to keep my desktop very clean whilst making these videos so that you don't get distracted by lots of other things. And just going to have a look inside this. It is a 7Z, a 7-zip file. If I double click on it, it will automatically open with WinRAR because that is what I've got set up as my default archive program. I actually use both, but that's the default one. Double click it, and I'm also going to double click the background to make it look neat, as you can see. So this is what is inside that archive. A docs folder with some readmes and some files. The main files in this case, the ones that are really important to us, are the BSA and the ESP. These are the files that actually do the work. They are the actual mod. And when Nexus Mod Manager installs, it will actually copy all of these files. It will actually copy all of them. However, if we wanted to manually install it, all we would really need are these two files. We could literally copy these two files to the Skyrim data folder right in there, and then select it in our Nexus Mod Manager, and it would work exactly as if we'd installed it with Nexus Mod Manager. I am not recommending you do that. It's just useful to know that that is what is going on in the background. So let me close that. Once again, open this up. So I've got my archive like so, and I want to add it to Nexus Mod Manager. Now you might be wondering, why do this? Why do it this way rather than click on the download with manager button? Well, there's almost no reason usually. Almost no reason usually. But occasionally when you click that button, for some reason Nexus Mod Manager, it just refuses to find the file. It can happen. It doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And then you can just download it manually and do the whole thing yourself. So it's more of a do this if the other one doesn't work. There are also some cases where we want to work inside here, edit it, and then add it to our mod manager, but that is not the case this time. It's just a useful trick to know. You will be using it in part 2 of this video series, so I thought I'd make you aware of it now. And to add this to Nexus Mod Manager, I simply go to the top option and select, if I cancel that again, it does actually have add mod from file and add mod from URL. Make sure it's add mod from file. You'll see it's just the plus icon, no fancy URL icon. You then select the archive, which is the unofficial Skyrim patch on my desktop. And then it will go through the process exactly as if you had clicked the download with manager button and it had already downloaded. It will add this to the mod manager, and then I can activate it exactly the way you activated the last mod. So if I wander down there, unofficial Skyrim patch, activate. And it's done. This one doesn't have a menu. It simply installs and you click OK and you are done. If you go to your plugins section, this mod actually has a plugin. And you'll find it almost always at the bottom. If it's an ESP, if it's an ESM, it'll be higher up. I will cover this in a later video. Now, load order is important. Load order is something that defines which order these files go in. So for example, I could move this up, my load order, so it goes there. You do not need to know that yet. The number of mods you have installed, it's fairly small, and load order is pretty much irrelevant at this point. I will cover that in more detail another time. Okay, so we have the unofficial Skyrim patch installed, and we did it a little bit of a different way, but for the rest of them, we're going to do it the normal Nexus Mod Manager way. So go along to the unofficial Dawnguard patch page, the file section, and download with manager. And that should appear in your download manager tab. And whilst it's doing that, go to the unofficial Hearthfire patch, go to the file section, download with manager. That will get added. And don't worry, you can actually do this. You can add all of these mods without going and installing them. You can just let it do all the downloading in one go. So the unofficial Dragonborn patch, file section, download with manager. And it's now basically added those 3 mods to the download queue in my Nexus Mod Manager and is busy downloading them. In fact, 2 of them have already finished. And once they have downloaded, they've been added to the manager, you can simply go along, activate the Dawnguard patch, activate the Hearthfire patch, and activate the Dragonborn patch. And that is all there is to it. Those plugins will now be found in your load order. So we are close to the end of this video, and hopefully now we have a few things. First of all, we have a knowledge of our game folder, our document folder, and the data folder. These are things we are going to be using quite a lot. We know how to install mods using Nexus Mod Manager and the download with manager button. We know how to download the file manually and activate it inside Nexus Mod Manager if we ever need to do that. And we have 5 mods installed. Believe it or not, you now really have the basic knowledge required to install probably about 80% of the mods out there. It's not going to be enough to install all the what I would consider essential mods, but it is enough to get you started and get a lot of great mods installed. In part 2, I'm going to be focusing on user interface mods, but there is a sort of hidden reason for that. It's not just that I want to improve your user interface. There is also something called the mod configuration menu, and that is a menu system that allows mods to have settings. This will allow you to customize mods, and it really is absolutely essential. So I'm going to show you how to install the user interface required for that, and how to actually disable the user interface if you just want the menu system, and a few other things. However, one critical component for that is going to be the Skyrim Script Extender, SKSE, and so I am going to leave you with a little bit of homework. Now, don't worry, I have actually made a video describing what SKSE is, how to install it, and how to run your game with SKSE enabled. I highly recommend you go and watch that video completely, thoroughly. I would say that is, whereas last time I said you should watch the video on Nexus Mod Manager, this time I have to say you really must watch the video on SKSE. Get that installed. Don't worry, it's not that hard if you follow the steps, and it is well worth it. SKSE is going to make the modding experience so much more. It really is going to add a lot of potential, some really great mods. Oh, and one thing I will point out, since I made that video, there has been an installer program made for SKSE, and you can download that on the page if you'd rather install it that way. However, I recommend against it. It's not that the installer's not good, it does its job. However, it does add files to the data folder, and you remember my rule, anything that goes in data folder should go through the mod manager. If you wish to do as I do, I would follow the instructions in that video and install it that way. It's a little safer if it comes down to you wanting to remove SKSE or upgrade it. So there's your homework anyway. But that is the end of this video, and I hope it was helpful. I hope you've got a better understanding of how to mod Skyrim, and I hope you're looking forward to taking it much, much further. You are more than welcome to join me for part 2, but whichever video you decide to join me on, I look forward to seeing you guys there, and until then, as always, have fun.
Our team will fly.